The current situation in League of Legends had become untenable. Not only is it ruining the game's balance, it also pushes away new players and old players alike. This can't go on any longer. I believe that Riot Games had put themselves in an unending cycle that will eventually ruin the game. League of Legends is power creep incarnate. I can't think of a more prominent or successful game that has so much power creep in it. For those of you that don't know, power creep is a term used to describe the phenomenon of games obsoleting old content because they constantly push new content which is more powerful into the game. Imagine if I had a simple race game where you can pick one of 3 cars. One car would handle really well, one would be really fast, and one would be a balance of both. As my game becomes more popular, I would push more and more cars, and eventually I would cover all the possible configurations of cars with equal overall power. The next car I will release would be a duplicate of a car that already exists if I want to keep the game balanced. Players would call me out on that and say that I'm lazy and reusing old content. In order to keep my game fresh and the player base happy, I would have to release a slightly stronger car which would obsolete at least one of the previous choices and make those cars dead content. League of Legends is the textbook example of power creep. It should be the picture next to the definition in whatever dictionary that has game design terms. The game's attempt to constantly churn out new champions create a ridiculous arms race between them where every one of them needs to be crazier than the previous one or else they're dead on arrival. As someone who played League of Legends consistently from Season 2 up to Season 6 and from then on it was on and off, I've seen the game go through almost all of its iterations. At one point I knew all 100 plus champions, what their skills were, their passives and how to counter them. Even back then the game was somewhat balanced, but today with 165 champions and more on the way, I can say confidently that I know maybe 20 of them at a competitive level. If new champions are constantly being pushed out, what happens to all the dead content? It either remains a relic of the past and a reminder of previous champion design philosophies. Sometimes they get a decent rework with champions like Wukong, and at other times it just overcomplicates everything and changes the entire nature of a champion that was previously your favorite pick. In the process of alienating old players that are now no longer identified with their favorite champions, you also alienated players who are on and off like me that might want to come back to the game but can't be bothered to learn the kits of all the new champions and the ones that got remastered. I can't get my friends who play this game for years to even join a friendly ARAM or just roll in normal games because of how many champions are currently in the game, and they completely don't know them. If that's not enough with the constant complication of the champion design, you are making the game very inaccessible to new players. I can maybe count on one hand champions that are simple enough for a new player to pick up and play that are not so poor. I don't think it's necessarily bad because I do like a game with a high skill ceiling, but we could still use a few more simple champions that are noob friendly and part of the meta in every role. This constant introduction of new champions created a loop where even if Riot doesn't have an idea or a justification for a new champion, they will create a new one essentially by doing a rework for an older champion that fell out of the meta, which then pushes out one more champion out of the meta and the cycle repeats itself. Admittedly, I don't follow the competitive part of the game enough or its esports scene, but I don't think you can make a balanced game with 165 different characters. Heck, by the time I published this video, I might have dragged my ass enough for the game to publish a new champion. I don't care if you put 1000 of the best minds on this planet to the task, you can't have a balanced game with 166 different champions, and more on the way. You will either end up with duplicates or you will have overpowered champions and obsolete ones as a result. League of Legends unironically became the TikTok of MOBA game, constantly dangling new champions like shiny keys to keep your attention instead of settling around the previously available pool of champions and balancing it out. I still remember the days where you had only maybe 2 undesirable champions that were underpicked but still worth a shot, and while they didn't appear in the regular low-level ranked queues or even the mid-level, they would still be picked in the high-level competitive play and esports. Today there are so many more champions that aren't worth picking or playing because there are already 3 different improved copies of them or way better choices that would make you a fool to pick them up. And it's a double-edged sword because no matter how many obsolete champions you have, the champion count on its own is big enough to scare old players away from returning to the game and new players who don't want to get a PhD in League of Legends to be competent in the game. I don't know how League continues pumping out champions without slowly killing the game or introducing a classic old school mode eventually where you only have a select pool of champions that are available for ranked. I've played the game on and off for years, and even I sometimes find myself misidentifying the champions against me because of the ridiculous skins you have multiplied by 165 champions available to choose. That's it, that's the video. If you liked it, leave a like on the video, it helps a lot. Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss any of my future videos, and leave your opinions in the comments, they are always appreciated, even if you disagree with me. Thank you guys for watching, have a good one.